Hello again. Today we are going to read another tall tale. But first let's review what we already know about tall tales. Tall tales usually have a frontier setting. They are humorous or funny, and they include lots of exaggeration. Remember, exaggeration is when you make something sound a lot more than it actually was. In our story we read last lesson, Paul Bunyan, there were lots of examples of exaggeration. One example was when it said that he was so large as a baby, he had to sleep in a covered wagon instead of a crib, and that his parents had to milk 4 cows just to fill his baby bottle. Take a minute and see if you can think of another example of exaggeration that was in Paul Bunyan. The character in today's tall tale is called Pecos Bill. Pecos Bill is a cowboy. Cowboys are men who work on a ranch or an area where cattle graze and take care of the cattle. Cowboys were common on the frontier because many people raised cattle for food, sold their milk, or sold the cattle themselves to make money. In this picture, we see Pecos Bill doing something a little crazy. Remember, in tall tales, characters have amazing adventures. So we'll have to read to find out what adventure Pecos Bill is going on here. Pecos Bill is named after a river, the Pecos River, that is found in the state of Texas. If we look on our map here, we can see the Pecos River. It is the light blue line with the red dots on it. On our map, upwards is north, down at the bottom of the page is south, to the right is east, and to the left is west. So the Pecos River is on the western side of Texas. Before we start our story, let's go over some of the vocabulary words that we'll see. The first word is tame. Tame means trained to obey people. For example, Alyssa worked hard all summer and tamed the wild horse. If you get a pet dog, you would have to work hard to tame it and train it to do different things. Some synonyms of the word tame. Remember, synonyms are words that mean the same thing. Some synonyms for tame are trained, controlled, held, kept, or pulled in. Energy. Energy is power or the ability to be active. When you play a soccer game, you burn a lot of energy. Persuaded. To be persuaded means to be caused to do something by asking, convincing, or arguing. For example, you might try to persuade your parents to get pizza for dinner. Relaxed. If something is relaxed, it has loosened control. For example, Pearl relaxed the tension on the leash so that her dog could run in front of her. The greatest cowboy that ever lived was the one they called Pecos Bill. Bill was born in East Texas and might have lived there forever. But one day, his pa came running out of the house, shouting to his ma, "Pack up everything we got, Ma. There's neighbors moved in near about 50 miles away, and it's getting too crowded around here." Now, 50 miles is a pretty long ways away. 50 miles is about from the distance from here at ALA all the way up to Salt Lake City. Have you ever been to Salt Lake City? Take a minute to think about how far that is and how long that car trip is. So Pecos Bill's dad is worried about neighbors moving in because he thinks it's going to get too crowded, but they live 50 miles away. So Bill's folks loaded a covered wagon with everything they owned and headed west. Remember, the West in the United States was less crowded at the time because people hadn't lived there before. It was a long, hard journey. The children were packed in the back of the wagon, all 18 of them. They fussed and hollered and fought as the wagon bounced along. The children were so loud that Bill's ma said you couldn't hear the thunder over the noise. One day, the wagon hit a rock, and little Bill fell right out. With all the fussing and fighting, nobody noticed. The wagon just kept on going. So little Bill found himself sitting in the dirt along the banks of the Pecos River, a real river in Texas. And that's how he came to be named Pecos Bill. But that was later. Little Bill was not your average baby. He didn't cry. He just crawled along the dusty plain, keeping his eyes peeled for whatever came along. And the first thing to come along was a coyote. When the coyote saw this dirty, naked little creature crawling around on all fours, she thought he was a cute little animal, even if his ears were mighty small. Little Bill reached up and patted the coyote's head and said, "Nice doggy." Do you think these things really happened, or do you think they might be exaggerations? The doggy, coyote, liked little Bill. She took him home and raised him with her pups. Baby coyotes are called pups, just like dogs. The coyotes taught Bill to roam the prairies and howl at the moon. They taught him the secrets of hunting, how to leap like an antelope, and how to run like the wind. They taught him how to chase lizards and lie so still that he was almost invisible. These details make Bill seem larger than life, so that is probably an exaggeration. The years went by, 18 of them to be exact, and Bill grew up strong and healthy. One day he was out hunting along the Pecos River when he saw a most unusual sight. It seemed to be an animal with 4 legs. Or was it 6 legs? And why did it have one head in front and another on top? That sounds like a crazy animal to me. Take a minute to guess. What do you think it's going to be? Well, it turned out to be a horse with a man riding it, something that Bill had never seen before. Bill scurried around the horse a few times, then he slowly crept forward and took a sniff of the man's boot. "Boy," said the man, "what are you doing scampering around down there in your birthday suit?" If Bill is wearing his birthday suit, that means that he's totally naked. "Sniffin'," said Bill. "I'm a coyote." "No, you ain't," said the man. "You're a man, like me." "No," howled Bill. "Coyote!" "What makes you think you are a coyote?" said the man. "I have fleas," said Bill. "So what?" said the man. "Lots of men here in Texas have fleas." But Bill was not persuaded or convinced. He was sure that he was a coyote. "Here's the thing," said the man. "Coyotes have pointy ears and big bushy tails, and you don't." "Yes, I do," cried Bill. He felt sure he had a tail, just like all the other coyotes. He looked over his shoulder, but he couldn't see one. He reached back to grab his tail, but he could not feel one. He backed up to the river and looked for his tail in the reflection, but it was not there. Bill was surprised. He thought for a moment. Then he decided that the man must be right. If he didn't have a tail, he couldn't be a coyote. If he wasn't a coyote, he must be a man. Bill decided he'd have to say farewell to his 4-legged friends and try living as a man. He went to stay with a man who just so happened to be a cowboy. The man gave Bill some clothes to wear and a horse to ride. He also gave him a nickname, Pecos Bill. Remember, he named him after the river. At first, Bill had trouble living like a man. He couldn't stand the way his clothes scratched and pulled at his skin, or the way his boots came between his bare feet and the good old dirt. and he couldn't see the need for a knife or a fork when it was just as easy to use your fingers to pick up your meat and tear it with your teeth. Bill learned to act like a man, but he still had a spark of wildness in him, and it would flash out from time to time. One day he was riding out on his horse when he was surprised by a mountain lion. The mountain lion scared Bill's horse away and charged right at Bill. But Pecos Bill was too quick for that mountain lion. He dodged the big cat and then hopped right onto his back. The mountain lion was not happy. No, sir. He bucked. He snarled. He tried to twist around and bite Bill. Bill held onto the lion's neck with one hand. With his other hand, he waved his cowboy hat in the air and shouted, "Yahoo!" The mountain lion did everything he could to shake Bill off, but it was no use. Finally, he gave in and let Bill ride him. Then Bill put a saddle on the lion and rode him like a horse. Bill had tamed the mountain lion, or found a way to control it. Another day, Pecos Bill was attacked by a giant rattlesnake. This particular rattlesnake was a mean old fellow who thought he was the king of the whole desert. He struck at Bill's heel, but Pecos Bill was too quick for that rattlesnake. Pecos Bill grabbed the rattler by the neck and squeezed him hard. The snake wriggled and writhed in Bill's grip. "Say uncle if you've had enough," said Bill. Uncle," said the snake, gurgling out the sounds as best as he could. Bill relaxed his grip, so he loosened his hold and asked the rattler, "Who's the boss around here?" "I was," said the snake, "but now you are." "Well then," said Pecos Bill, "how'd you like to work for me?" "Sure thing," said the rattler. The rattler just looked at Pecos Bill with admiration and purred like a kitten. Remember, admiration means a feeling of deep respect and liking. Pecos Bill had squeezed all of the meanness right out of that snake. I think that sounds like a pretty amazing feat. A lot of things that happened that we just read seem like really amazing feats. Do you think they all really happened, or do you think they might be exaggerations? Next, Pecos Bill rolled the rattler up into a coil and rode away on his mountain lion. On the way back to camp, he spotted a runaway cow. He grabbed the rattler and tied a loop at one end of him to make a lasso. A lasso is a rope tied in a circle to catch a cow. Then he rode after the cow, swinging his lasso above his head. When he was close enough, he tossed the looped end of the snake over the cow. Pecos Bill jumped off the mountain lion and pulled the lasso tight, stopping the runaway cow right in his tracks. Pecos Bill brought the cow back to his friend, the cowboy. After that, he taught all the cowboys at the ranch how to use a lasso to catch a runaway cow. Pecos Bill just invented catching cattle with ropes. Do you think he could really rope a cow with a rattlesnake, though? That sounds like an exaggeration to me. He taught them other things, too. He taught them how to tame wild horses by riding them, just as he had done with the mountain lion. He even taught them how to sing cowboy songs around the campfire at night, in a voice that sounded a lot like a lonesome coyote howling at the moon. Why do you think his voice sounded like a coyote howling at the moon? Probably because he was raised by coyotes, huh? Pecos Bill was famous for his riding skills. He once rode a wild Mustang called the Backbreaker that no one else could ride. But that story pales in comparison to the time he rode something that no man had ever ridden before, and I reckon no man ever will again. A cyclone. A cyclone is a real storm, like a tornado. I don't think a real man would be able to ride a tornado, though. That's probably an exaggeration. That's right. Pecos Bill lassoed a cyclone with his rattlesnake lasso and jumped on its rip-roaring back. The cyclone spun furiously, trying to throw Bill off. It went spinning this way and that way across the deserts of Arizona, trying to knock Bill off by rising up into the air and digging down into the ground. Pecos Bill didn't let go until the cyclone spun itself out of energy, and by that time, the two of them had carved out a deep canyon. So remember, energy is the power to keep moving. If you ever go to Arizona, you can still see the canyon today. It's called the Grand Canyon. Ooh, hold on 1 minute. This says that Pecos Bill made the Grand Canyon. But in our last lesson, we learned that Paul Bunyan made the Grand Canyon. What do you think? Do you think the Grand Canyon was made by either of them? I think it might be an exaggeration.
Alright, my friends, as always, I have some questions for you about that story. My first question is, what are some examples of amazing adventures that Pecos Bill went on? Yes, there are lots of examples. He went on a lot of amazing adventures. He was raised by coyotes. He tamed a mountain lion and a cyclone and rode them both. And he wrestled the meanness out of a rattlesnake. Where did today's story take place? What was the setting? Yes. Remember, most of today's story took place in the state of Texas. I'm going to step forward so you can see that map a little bit better. Texas is this very large state that's shown in pink on my map. Remember, when the United States was first started, it was just 13 states over on the eastern side. But people started moving towards the west into a previously unsettled area called the frontier. Texas was a part of the American frontier, and that's where today's story took place. All right, my friends, what are some things that happened in our story today that couldn't happen in real life? Yes, lots of examples there too. Rattlesnakes don't talk in real life, and people can't ride a cyclone or a mountain lion. Because there were some things in this story that couldn't happen in real life, do you think this story was fiction or nonfiction? Yes, this story was fiction. All tall tales are fictional stories. They also all include larger-than-life characters, like Pecos Bill. They include exaggeration. There was lots of exaggeration in our story today. They're usually pretty funny. I think Pecos Bill had some funny adventures. And of course, they usually take place on the American frontier. Alright, my friends, let's talk about exaggeration again for a little bit. I'm going to give you some examples. If the example I give you is an example of exaggeration, I want you to say yes. And if it's not, say no. So let's see, if I say that the weather was so cold that even the snow turned blue. Do you think that's something that would really happen? Is that a fact? Something that could actually happen? Or is that an example of exaggeration? That is an exaggeration. Snow doesn't actually turn blue. What if I say the snow covered the ground and it made it difficult for the cars to move? That is a fact. A fact is something that is true no matter what. And that is a fact. It's not an exaggeration. What if I say that the little girl ate a grilled cheese sandwich? Is that something that could actually happen, or is that an exaggeration? That's something that could actually happen, so that would be a fact. But what if I say the lumberjack ate a pancake that was bigger than my whole house? That's not a fact, because that can't be true. It's an example of exaggeration. All right, my friends, what we're going to do next, included on this assignment, there is a PDF. I want you to make sure you get that open with Cami. I'm going to jump over to my computer screen and show you what we're going to do. We're going to be dealing with facts and with exaggeration. Give me 1 second and I'll show you. All right, my friends, when you have that PDF open in Cami, it should look like this. So at the top, it says fact or tall tale. Remember, a fact is something that is true or something that could happen in real life. And a tall tale is something that has been exaggerated or something that is not true. In our story today, there were some things in our story that were true, they were facts, and there were some things that were exaggerated or that were part of our tall tale. On this worksheet, there are sentences that are either facts or tall tales. Your job is to tell me which of these sentences are facts and which are tall tales. How you're going to do that is in this line next to the sentence. You may use your text box or your drawing tool, whichever one is easier for you. And you are going to write an F if it is a fact. Oh, I'm going to change my thickness a little bit. Or a T if it is a tall tale. So if the sentence is true, you'll write a F for fact. And if it is a tall tale, you will write a T. All right, I am going to read all those sentences aloud. Follow along with me as you fill out your worksheet. If you need a second longer to think about it, I'll repeat each sentence twice. If after the second time I say the sentence, you need some more time to think about it, go ahead and pause the video and then press play when you're ready for the next one. All right, my friends, I'm going to erase the ones I did so far. Our first sentence says, the Pecos River is in Texas. Is that a fact or a tall tale? The Pecos River is in Texas. Number 2 says, the coyote took Bill home to her den. Is that a fact, something true that could happen? Or is that a tall tale or an exaggeration? Number 2, the coyote took Bill home to her den. All right, number 3, Pecos Bill lassoed a cyclone. Number 3, Pecos Bill lassoed a cyclone. Number 4, cyclones are real storms with very strong winds. Number 4, cyclones are real storms with very strong winds. Number 5, cowboys take care of cattle. Number 5, cowboys take care of cattle. Number 6, a rattlesnake can be used as a lasso. 6, a rattlesnake can be used as a lasso. And our last one, number 7, a coyote looks like a small wolf. 7, a coyote looks like a small wolf. Okay, friends, when you are done filling out all of the answers on that one, and after you have turned it in, there is one more PDF attached. We're going to do one more assignment today. Let me jump over to that one and I'll show you what we're going to do there. Hello again. Hey, once you get that PDF open, it should look like this. In this first column that we filled out yesterday, you will see my answers. So those are the answers that I filled in our last lesson. It won't be the ones that you put in, but that's okay. And it's okay if your answers are a little bit different than mine. Today, we are going to look at our Pecos Bill column, and we are going to fill in all of these details about Pecos Bill. We're going to start with his amazing childhood. Take a minute to think about something that was amazing about his childhood, and put it in that box. Remember, for this one, you'll need to use the text box, so you can make your text small enough to fit in those little squares. You may also want to change the font size. I used font size 11. You can go a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger if you need to, so it can fit in that box. I think something amazing about Pecos Bill's childhood was that Pecos Bill was raised by coyotes. Oh my goodness. There we go. What about a creation or invention? What did Pecos Bill create or invent? In our story, it said that he created a rattlesnake lasso and invented paddle roping. All right, friends, our next column says amazing adventures. There are a lot of amazing adventures that Pecos Bill went on. You can choose any of them that you would like to put in this box. Pick any of his amazing adventures. There were an awful lot in that story. He wrestled the meanness out of a snake. He tamed a cyclone. He tamed a mountain lion. He did a lot of crazy things. Pick your favorite amazing adventure to put in that box. What about humor? There were lots of things in our story that happened that I thought were pretty funny. What was your favorite humorous moment from our story? And then very last, exaggerations. There were a lot of exaggerations in the story of Pecos Bill today. Pick one of your favorite examples of exaggeration and put it in our box. My favorite example of exaggeration, because I think it's the craziest thing I've ever heard, is that Pecos Bill tamed and rode a cyclone. That sounds pretty crazy to me, but it couldn't happen in real life. Alright, my friends, when you have all of these boxes filled in, you'll go ahead and turn it in up at the top. And that is our last assignment for today. We'll see you next time.